Teacher demands black woman move for his child shocked when flight attendant gets involved. Welcome, dear viewers and storytellers alike. Today, I invite you on a journey filled with heart-pounding tension, unexpected twists, and a clash of clashing wills aboard a packed flight in the skies above. Our tale begins with what seems like a simple seat dispute, yet, as events unravel, it becomes a high-stakes battle of pride, prejudice, and justice. Follow along as a black woman stands her ground when a pushy teacher demands she move for his child, only to be blindsided when a vigilant flight attendant leaps into action. Prepare to hold your breath as hidden motives, buried secrets, and fateful encounters stir the air, culminating in a karmic reckoning. Before we dive in, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. If you're excited about this story, let us know. If you enjoyed the video, press 1. If not, press O. Your feedback really inspires me to gather more uplifting and meaningful stories. It was a balmy afternoon in late June when Flight DL-476, a Delta Airlines Boeing 737, prepared to depart from Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, the busiest airport in the world. The long line of travelers filed into the jet bridge, each passenger quietly praying the overhead bins would not be full by the time they boarded. Parents juggled strollers and diaper bags, business travelers clutched laptops to finalize last-minute reports, and couples whispered excitedly about the vacation that awaited them at their tropical destination. In the center of the line, patiently waiting to board, stood a dignified black woman named Nia. She wore a simple, yet elegant outfit, a neatly pressed blouse and jeans that hugged her figure. Though weary from a week's worth of business meetings, her poise radiated a confident warmth. After glancing down at her boarding pass, she slid it into her carry-on and thought about all she had accomplished on her short trip to Atlanta. Behind her, a tall, wiry man in his mid-40s tapped his foot impatiently. He clutched a tattered leather satchel while his freckle-faced son fidgeted at his side. This man, Mr. Garrick, was a middle school history teacher, well known in his small-town community for two distinct traits: a razor-sharp knowledge of obscure historical events and an unyielding sense of self-righteousness. After a few grueling days at an educational conference, he was eager to return home. His son, Noah, had joined him for the conference's family events, and now they were set to fly back together. It never occurred to Mr. Garrick that the person standing in front of him also had her own story, her own obligations, or her own well-deserved space. The tension began innocently enough. As the line crept forward and turned into the aircraft, Mr. Garrick noticed that the overhead bins on board were filling. Anxiety pulsed through him. He hated gate-checking his bag. He cast a glance at Nia, who calmly took her seat in row 17, an aisle seat that allowed her a little legroom. Her features relaxed, and she seemed to exhale the stress of the day. "There, Mr." Garrick mumbled, noting her seat's strategic location. "Noah needs the aisle. He'll need the bathroom often." He marched forward. Before Nia could buckle her seatbelt, "Mr." Garrick cleared his throat and tapped her shoulder. "Excuse me," he said, "I'd like you to switch seats. My son needs the aisle seat. He gets anxious." Nia turned, slightly startled. She offered a polite smile and responded in a calm, courteous voice. "I'm sorry, sir, but I specifically requested an aisle seat as well. It's been a long trip. I'd like to remain seated here." "Mr." Garrick's eyebrows twitched in frustration. People around them were still filing to their own seats, creating a bottleneck in the aisle. The flight attendant, a bright-eyed woman named Celia, with a name tag pinned to her crisp navy uniform, politely reminded everyone to keep moving. But Mr. Garrick remained rooted in place, ignoring Celia's attempts to keep the flow going. He insisted, We have a child here. Are you seriously not going to move for a child? Nia took a breath, measuring her words carefully to avoid confrontation. I understand your child's needs, but I can't move right now. This seat. It's important for me, too. If there's another aisle seat open, I don't mind letting you or him switch with someone else. But I'm staying put. An awkward hush fell over the cabin as a handful of passengers paused to see what would happen next. People always seemed to hover when confrontation struck, no matter how trivial. Mr. Garrick's cheeks reddened, his pride stung, especially since his son was now looking on, uncertain. He repeated more sternly, I'm telling you, he has special needs, he's prone to anxiety. We have to be near the aisle so he can go to the restroom or walk around. If you have any decency, you'll move for him. Nia lowered her eyes for a moment, struggling to remain respectful despite his tone. I'm sorry, but I'm not giving up my seat. Now annoyance rippled along the row of passengers. Another woman across the aisle pressed her body against the seat to let the others pass. Muttering something about the free seats in the back, Mr. Garrick continued his crusade. You're being downright inconsiderate, he snarled, though trying to keep his voice quiet enough that flight attendants wouldn't hear. I'm a teacher. I know the importance of kindness and cooperation. You're not showing either. Nia's eyes darted around uncomfortably. A flicker of tension braced her posture, but she still spoke evenly. I'm not obligated to move because you're a teacher, she said softly, nor because you have a child with you. I'm sorry if that upsets you. I don't mean to be rude. Mr. Garrick gave an exasperated sigh. Another passenger behind him urged him to move on so they could get to their seat. Meanwhile, Noah looked down, fidgeting with his hands, not entirely comfortable with the hostility. His father was exuding. Mr. Garrick finally squeezed past Nia, settling into the middle seat next to her, while Noah took the window seat. The tension in the row could have been cut with a knife. As the flight began to taxi from the gate, Mr. Garrick leaned over, continuing his diatribe in a hushed tone, laced with resentment. I hope you realize you've already ruined this flight for us. Nia pretended to read the in-flight safety card to avoid meeting his gaze. She heard the announcement from the captain, flight time is about 2 hours and 15 minutes, and tried to focus on anything but the man who glowered next to her. Half an hour into the air, the seatbelt sign turned off. People scurried to the lavatories or to rummage through overhead bins. That's when Mr. Garrick decided to turn up the pressure. Excuse me, he beckoned to Celia, the flight attendant. She approached with a polite smile, tucking a strand of hair beneath her cap. How can I help you? Celia asked brightly. With feigned diplomacy, Mr. Garrick recounted the entire story, emphasizing that his young child had potential anxiety issues and that the woman in the aisle seat refused to switch. The subtext was clear. The rude passenger was a black woman who, in Mr. Garrick's mind, had no reason to decline a teacher's request. He fully expected Celia to side with him. Celia listened attentively, then turned to Nia. Ma'am, would you be more comfortable switching seats? If you have any concerns, I'm here to help. Nia glanced up, politely shaking her head. Thank you for asking, but I really prefer to stay in my assigned seat. I need to be able to move when I need to as well. Celia nodded in understanding, her attention shifting to the father and son. Sir, I'm sorry, but if this passenger prefers to stay in her seat, that's her right. If there's an available aisle seat, I'll do my best to find one for you or your son, but I can't force another passenger to move. Mr. Garrick's mouth dropped, stunned by the flight attendant's response. He had assumed his position as a teacher and father would guarantee special treatment. I can't believe this, he fumed. Where's your compassion? Some people are so selfish. Celia's eyes flicked from him to Nia, carefully masking her disapproval. I'll check for open seats, she offered, but if the flight is fully booked, there may not be an alternative. Before Mr. Garrick could retort, Celia excused herself to scan the seating chart. Nia forced herself to keep her gaze straight forward, ignoring his disapproving stare. She could almost feel the heat emanating from him. She had encountered these kinds of confrontations before, subtle prejudice disguised as polite requests, then turning into accusations. Sometimes it was about a seat. Other times it was a line at the store. The pattern felt painfully familiar. The next 20 minutes were riddled with tension. Celia reappeared to regretfully inform Mr. Garrick that there were no open aisle seats left. The flight was fully booked. Glaring at Nia, he grumbled, "Typical." And Nia couldn't tell if he meant typical of her or typical of airline woes, but the sourness in his tone said enough. Suddenly the seatbelt sign blinked on again. The pilot announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, we're anticipating some turbulence ahead. Please return to your seats and buckle up." The plane lurched slightly, jostling the passengers. Mr. Garrick scowled as he realized they'd have to remain in their current arrangement for the duration of the flight. For the next half hour, the plane experienced moderate turbulence. Drinks quivered in cups, and overhead bins rattled. Celia and her fellow flight attendants suspended service temporarily for safety reasons. Children on the plane began to whine, and anxious passengers gripped their armrests. Mr. Garrick's son, Noah, shut his eyes, face turned slightly green. Mr. Garrick noticed how queasy Noah looked and nudged Nia's arm again. "This is exactly why we needed that aisle seat," he hissed. "If he gets sick." Nia didn't respond. She was holding on to the seat in front of her, occasionally checking the overhead light. She, too, felt uneasy with the turbulence, but it wasn't enough to unravel her composure. She was determined not to engage with Mr. Garrick's hostility. Then, in a sudden twist, the plane gave a violent jolt. A loud gasp echoed through the cabin. Celia's voice came over the intercom, calmly instructing everyone to remain seated. Mr. Garrick's face paled. Noah moaned, pressing his face into the seat. A sickly smell wafted over them. A wave of nausea overcame the boy. Mr. Garrick fumbled for the air sickness bag, but was too slow. A wave of mortification set in. Noah vomited. Some of it splashed onto Mr. Garrick's pants and shoes, and a few droplets scattered onto Nia's carry-on in the aisle. Chaos unfolded in their row. Nia quickly jumped to her feet, yanking tissues from her bag and offering them to the father and son without hesitation. Despite the anger Mr. Garrick had shown her, Nia's immediate response was compassion and a desire to help. She guided them through it, telling Mr. Garrick to breathe, gently rubbing Noah's back with her free hand, ignoring the dampness on her bag. Celia arrived promptly with extra towels and disinfectant wipes. The flight's turbulence continued, making the messy clean-up that much more difficult. Mr. Garrick, half ashamed and half panicked for his son, mumbled a thank you so quiet it was almost inaudible. Nia gave a small nod, her expression understanding, as if to say, "It's okay, we'll manage." Gradually, the turbulence subsided. The plane stabilized, and the seatbelt sign turned off once more. Celia carefully helped to sanitize the area, though the odor lingered. Noah looked miserable, but Nia offered him a mint from her carry-on to help settle his stomach. Mr. Garrick kept his eyes down, occasionally stealing looks at Nia, as if wrestling with embarrassment. Still, not a word of apology or further gratitude passed his lips. Minutes later, Celia returned with a fresh seat assignment. A row near the back had been vacated because the occupant needed to move closer to the front for medical reasons. "If you two would like to switch seats, we can get you settled," she said gently to Mr. Garrick. He nodded curtly, but Noah hesitated, looking from his father to Nia. Then, in a small voice, Noah said, "I don't want to move. She helped me. I feel better here." It was a surprising statement, and Mr. Garrick seemed unable to argue with it. He let out a defeated sigh. Fine. He turned to Nia, jaw tight, but his voice was more subdued now. I appreciate your help. She gave him a quick smile. Of course, she replied softly. Nothing more was said. Time slithered by. The cabin lights dimmed as the crew prepared for the final approach, but more trouble was brewing. Just when everyone thought the flight would end without further incident, a loud noise from the back of the plane caught everyone's attention, a commotion that overshadowed the earlier seat argument. A female passenger stood in the aisle, trembling, pale as a sheet. Her friend was pressing the call button repeatedly. "Help! She can't breathe!" the friend cried. Passengers craned their necks to see what was happening. Celia and two other flight attendants rushed to the scene. The unwell passenger, a woman in her late 30s, clutched her chest, gasping for air. She sank to her knees, and another wave of panic rolled through the plane as people called for help. "She needs oxygen!" someone shouted. Nia felt a surge of adrenaline. She glanced at Mr. Garrick and Noah, their shock mirroring her own. Without hesitation, she sprang from her seat and hurried down the aisle to assist. In that moment, she discarded the friction of the earlier seat, dispute someone's life was in danger. "Is there a doctor or nurse on board?" Celia was asking, her voice trembling but controlled. "We need medical professionals." Nia raised her hand. "I'm a physician's assistant," she said, kneeling next to the woman. Over the years, she had worked in a variety of medical settings, from emergency rooms to private clinics. The experience of triage and immediate care was second nature to her. She checked the woman's pulse. It was racing, and her breathing was labored. "Do you have a history of asthma or any heart condition?" Nia asked gently, glancing at the friend. "She has a heart murmur," the friend stammered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "She's on medication, but she never had an attack like this on a plane before." While Nia administered oxygen with the help of Celia, she spoke in a calm, reassuring voice to the panicked passenger. "I need you to focus on slowing your breaths. Breathe with me. Count to 3 in, 3 out." She monitored the woman's vital signs, comforted her, and guided the flight attendant on precisely how to help. Observing from his seat, Mr. Garrick felt a pang of shame. Throughout the flight, he had treated Nia like an obstacle to his personal comfort. Meanwhile, she had repeatedly shown compassion. Now, she was risking her own comfort and time to save a stranger's life in the middle of a flight. His gaze flickered to the seat behind him, where an elderly couple also watched the scene unfold, whispering about Nia's swift, capable response. For 10 agonizing minutes, Nia oversaw the passenger's care. She managed the oxygen flow, directed Celia to retrieve the plane's emergency medical kit, and kept the woman conscious and calm. Finally, the woman's breathing stabilized. The color returned to her face, and tears of relief replaced those of fear. The entire cabin seemed to exhale in unison. A smattering of applause erupted from the seats, subdued yet heartfelt, a collective sign of admiration for Nia's heroics. Celia gently squeezed Nia's arm, whispering, "Thank you so much." If you hadn't been here, the sentiment remained unfinished, but Nia merely nodded, humility in her expression. It was second nature for her to help. She never expected applause or praise, just the relief of knowing the passenger was safe. The plane finally made its descent, and Celia radioed ahead to ensure that paramedics would be waiting at the gate for the unwell passenger. Carefully, passengers returned to their seats, and Nia joined Mr. Garrick and Noah. The hush in their row was thick with unspoken realizations. The teacher's earlier demands now seemed so trivial. He watched as the woman he had belittled carefully placed her stethoscope, a personal item she always carried back into her bag. He still hadn't mustered the courage to apologize. As the flight touched down and slowed on the runway, the tension of the past hours felt as though it was melting away, replaced by exhaustion and relief. When the seatbelt sign turned off, passengers rose to grab their luggage. Even though the paramedics would board first, many gathered their bags to expedite their exit once allowed. Amid the bustle, Celia escorted the paramedics to the ill passenger, who was able to walk off the plane on her own, supported by her friend and guided by the medical team. Nia retrieved her carry-on from the overhead bin, noticing the faint remnants of the accident with Noah. She felt grateful the worst was behind them. She slid on her jacket and turned to exit. That's when Mr. Garrick finally spoke up, standing in the narrow aisle as if blocking her path. His eyes betrayed a turbulent mix of remorse and humility. "I want to say I'm sorry," he began, voice low. "I shouldn't have spoken to you that way. It was disrespectful, and I appreciate everything you did for Noah and for that passenger." The sincerity in his voice startled her for a moment. She gave him a half smile. "Apology accepted," she said, truly meaning it. "We all go through tough moments. Take care." He nodded, swallowing hard, letting her pass. Noah, who had been watching silently, waved at Nia with shy gratitude. She ruffled his hair and nodded in goodbye, stepping into the aisle, heading for the exit. Mr. Garrick followed, his mind brimming with lingering guilt for having misjudged her. But the story was far from over. Once they reached the airport terminal, the paramedics led the ill passenger away. People parted with nods of respect for Nia, some quietly thanking her. Mr. Garrick drifted behind with his son, grappling with his swirling emotions. He had never been forced to confront his own biases so directly before. It was as though fate had orchestrated the series of events, from the seat argument to a near-medical crisis, all culminating in a lesson he desperately needed to learn. Nia approached the baggage claim, scanning for the correct carousel. She was on the phone with her sister, recounting the dramatic mid-air crisis, emphasizing how grateful she was that the woman had stabilized. "Not far away, Mr." Garrick and Noah stood, collecting their suitcases. The boy hesitated, glancing at his father. Then, with surprising determination, Noah tugged at Mr. Garrick's sleeve. "Dad, can I say something to her?" Mr. Garrick nodded, stepping aside, giving him the go-ahead. The child approached Nia, who was ending her call. "I'm really sorry about earlier," Noah began, voice trembling with sincerity. "Dad wanted the seat for me. We just weren't thinking about you, but you helped me when I was sick. That was nice." He swallowed, a flush creeping to his cheeks. Touched, Nia bent her knees slightly to meet him at eye level. "I appreciate you saying that. I know you were feeling bad, and seats on planes can be tricky. I'm just glad you're okay now." Noah released a shaky breath. Behind him, Mr. Garrick looked on, arms folded, but the folds in his brow had softened. Nia gently ruffled Noah's hair. "Take care of yourself, and maybe next time you can ask politely if you want the aisle seat before boarding. Sometimes people do have reasons they can't move, but you never know if there's another seat or another passenger who's happy to switch." Noah nodded. "I will." After that gentle exchange, Nia turned back to gather her luggage. Mr. Garrick watched, uncertain whether to speak again or let her go. Before he could decide, Nia was gone, disappearing into the crowd. The teacher and his son carried their suitcases in thoughtful silence until they reached the passenger pickup area. They had a 2-hour drive back to their small town. During that drive, Mr. Garrick recounted the day's events in his head, replaying the humiliating confrontation. His mind circled back to the moment when Nia jumped to help the distressed passenger. Why had he assumed she would be indifferent or unhelpful? He remembered a seminar from his teacher conference about cultural competence and empathy topics that, ironically, he had seen as soft skills compared to the deep dives into historical events he usually favored. And yet, the real lesson had unfolded outside that conference, aboard flight DL-476. The next day, Mr. Garrick sat in his modest office, preparing lesson plans for the summer school session. Noah was in the adjacent living room, flipping channels on the television. Mr. Garrick felt unsettled, as though a moral debt weighed on him. He decided to take an uncharacteristic step. He visited an online forum for educators, hoping to glean advice on bridging personal biases. Many people in the forum shared stories of moments they realized their assumptions had hurt others. The teacher read post after post, feeling a familiar pang each time he recognized himself in those experiences. A notion hit him: an apology was not enough. The fleeting conversation at the airport had been sincere, but might Nia believe he had truly changed? He wanted to find some tangible way to show gratitude and respect, to go beyond words. He found a passenger gratitude form on Delta's official website. You could write letters to highlight the helpfulness of flight crew or fellow passengers. Although it was typically used to commend flight attendants, Mr. Garrick decided to fill it out in praise of Nia, describing how she saved another passenger's life and consoled Noah. He wrote from the heart, even if he worried it might never reach her. 2 weeks passed with no word. Mr. Garrick threw himself into teaching, determined to incorporate more empathy and fairness into his lessons. He found himself reflecting on injustices in historical contexts, bridging them to current social issues with new conviction. He also made a point of encouraging his summer school students to practice empathy during group projects, something he'd never stressed quite so diligently before. Noah, too, seemed changed. At baseball practice, he offered a helping hand to a teammate who struggled with a certain drill, a small gesture that Mr. Garrick noticed with pride and relief. Then, one muggy afternoon, Mr. Garrick opened his email to find a message from a Delta representative. It read, "Dear Mr. Garrick, thank you for submitting a passenger gratitude form. We have identified the passenger you described, and after reading your heartfelt letter, we would like to pass along your message of thanks to her. Would you be comfortable if we share your email address? Alternatively, you can write an additional note that we can forward on your behalf." Mr. Garrick stared at the text, heart pounding. Unsure if Nia would even want to hear from him, he took a leap of faith. He wrote a personal note, explaining everything: his embarrassment at his behavior, how her act of kindness had changed his perspective, how he'd begun teaching empathy more consciously. He concluded by thanking her again for caring for his son and the ill passenger. Then he sent the letter to the Delta representative, requesting it be forwarded. Another week fluttered by without a reply. Mr. Garrick tried not to check his email obsessively, but he couldn't help it. Each morning he scrolled with anticipation, but there was nothing. Meanwhile, his daily routine continued: summer school, errands, quiet dinners with Noah. At long last, one Monday night, a new message from an unfamiliar address appeared in his inbox. The subject line read, "Gratitude from Flight Deal 476. Mr. Garrick's pulse thudded in his ears. He opened it to find a gracious response from Nia herself. "Hello, Mr. Garrick. I received your letter through Delta. Thank you for your thoughtful words. I appreciate your honesty and willingness to reflect on what happened. I was simply doing what anyone with medical training would do in an emergency. I'm glad your son is doing well. It's heartening to hear you're incorporating empathy into your teaching. That's something the world needs more of. Take care and have a wonderful summer, Nia." As he read, Mr. Garrick felt an overwhelming sense of relief. Her response was concise but genuine. She wished him well. In that moment, he felt the final puzzle piece fall into place. The karmic retribution was not punishment, but an opportunity for redemption. The lesson the universe delivered came packaged in a lesson about humility, compassion, and the fragility of assumptions. But fate had yet another twist. A few days later, Mr. Garrick received an email from his school's principal. The small institution he worked for had decided to pilot a new professional development program, a student led panel on inclusivity, featuring guest speakers from various communities. The principal asked if Mr. Garrick would be willing to moderate the discussion, given his thorough knowledge of history and teaching. Mr. Garrick agreed, suspecting this was exactly the kind of karmic scenario that would let him repay some small fraction of the debt. He felt to a certain passenger who taught him a lesson in humility. The panel was scheduled for early August. Students ranging from middle school to high school were invited to participate, sharing experiences of diversity and acceptance. A local news station even planned to cover the event. On the day of the panel, as the summer sun blazed overhead, Mr. Garrick straightened his tie and reviewed his notes for the final time. Anxiety gnawed at him. He wanted to do justice to this topic, but who was he to present on fairness and empathy after his embarrassing behavior? He remembered Nia's words, "It's heartening to hear you're incorporating empathy into your teaching." That's something the world needs more of. Those words emboldened him. If anything, his own misstep made him an example of how easy it was to slip into prejudice and how one can strive to correct that course. The panel began. Students bravely told stories of personal struggles, times they had been overlooked, times they had to advocate for themselves. Mr. Garrick guided the discussion with open-ended questions, encouraging them to explore empathy, allyship, and the power of acknowledging one's biases. As he listened to their accounts, his mind returned to Flight DL 476 again and again. He reflected on how one small moment, an argument over a seat, had ignited a life-changing realization. At the end of the event, the audience erupted in applause. The principal thanked Mr. Garrick, the panelists, and the students. They began to pack up. Just then, the principal tapped Mr. Garrick's shoulder. "We have a surprise," the principal said, grinning. "There's someone here who asked to speak with you briefly." Curious, Mr. Garrick followed his principal to the side of the stage. Standing there, near the backstage curtain, was a familiar figure, Nia. She wore a bright yet understated blouse, and a gentle smile warmed her features. Shock paralyzed him for a moment, then he found his voice. "Nia," he breathed, "what are you doing here?" She looked a bit shy. "I was visiting a friend in the area, and your principal reached out after reading the letter you sent to Delta. She wondered if I'd be interested in attending the panel, and I thought, well, it seemed meaningful." Mr. Garrick's mind spun. He had not anticipated this. He extended his hand, then, remembering her kindness, pulled back awkwardly, unsure if a handshake was right. She took his hand anyway, smiling. "It's good to see you under calmer circumstances," she said, good-natured teasing in her tone. He laughed nervously. "I can't believe you made the time to come. I hope you enjoyed the panel." "I did," she said. "Your students spoke so eloquently, and you were a thoughtful moderator." "Thank you for including me." Behind them, a few teachers lingered, curious about the interaction. Mr. Garrick introduced Nia to several colleagues, explaining briefly how they met. The reaction was one of admiration and heartfelt thanks. Everyone recognized how instrumental she'd been on that plane. Quietly, the two drifted to a corner, away from prying eyes. Mr. Garrick lowered his voice. "I meant every word I wrote in that letter. You really changed the way I see things." Nia paused, reflecting on his statement. "Maybe it wasn't me," she replied gently. "Maybe you just needed a nudge to see the person behind the seat, behind the label, behind everything. You did the rest." He smiled, eyes brimming with gratitude. For a fleeting moment, the memory of his initial pettiness stung, but it only served to remind him how far he'd come. They chatted briefly about what life had been like since the flight, about the passenger who had recovered fully. Nia had received a follow-up email from the woman's grateful friend. Before parting ways, Nia asked, "How's Noah?" She had never forgotten how vulnerable he looked that day. Mr. Garrick grinned broadly. "He's doing really well." He's at a friend's birthday party today, or he would have been here. He's still embarrassed about what happened on the plane, but I think he learned a lot that day too. They exchanged contact information, promising to keep in touch. Something about meeting her again on this day, at this event, felt like the final chord of a destiny-laced symphony. Mr. Garrick understood that the best karmic retribution is not always punishing the wrongdoer, but guiding them toward real change. For many weeks to come, Mr. Garrick and Nia occasionally exchanged messages, updates on life. The classroom, medical developments, and stories about the everyday battles people face. While they came from different worlds, they found common ground in their desire to make those worlds better. One seat on one plane had been the flashpoint for a profound transformation that neither could have predicted. In time, the story of Flight DL-476 became a piece of local legend. Some teachers at his school would tease him, "Careful, or Mr. Garrick will tell you about the time he got taught a lesson by a passenger on an airplane." He took it all in stride. Indeed, it was his favorite new anecdote. Every retelling reminded him and others that empathy can ignite in the unlikeliest of places, that prejudice can be undone, and that redemption often comes through real human connection. The final karmic note played out subtly by letting himself be vulnerable and recognizing the error of his ways. Mr. Garrick broke free of the stubborn arrogance that had so often cramped his life. He became a kinder teacher, a more understanding parent, and a more open-hearted member of his community. Each new day was an opportunity to live the lesson he had learned aboard that Boeing 737 on that fateful June afternoon. And that's how an aisle seat dispute blossomed into a transformative moment of compassion and redemption, how a teacher learned what it really meant to practice the values he taught his students. Nia, in her grace, gained a new friend and ally, proving that sometimes the clearest act of karmic retribution is a chance to do better. Thank you for traveling with us through this extraordinary tale of seat disputes, unexpected heroics, and a teacher's journey of personal growth. Our dramatic flight demonstrated the power of unity when prejudice is overcome by empathy. If you've made it this far, we hope you felt the tension, cheered for our courageous protagonist, and felt the sweet triumph of righteous karma. Please support this channel by tapping that like button and sharing this video with friends who love a good, suspenseful story. And don't forget to subscribe for more unforgettable adventures like this one. We have many more twists and turns in store. Until next time, safe travels and happy storytelling.